I hadn't planned on staying long. It was one of those winter afternoons where the air outside feels too sharp to breathe, and you end up saying yes to things you should probably leave alone. I'd stopped by just to return the book she'd lent me. A first edition she made me promise not to dog-ear. The promise had been easy. Letting go of the book, not so much. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Her sweater was loose at the sleeves, hair slightly damp, like she'd just stepped out of the shower but hadn't decided on the rest of the day yet. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. "I didn't think you'd mind." Her living room was warm, almost too warm compared to the cold outside. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and something faintly floral I couldn't name. I placed the book on her coffee table, but she didn't look at it. Her gaze stayed on me for a beat longer than necessary, and I felt that quiet drop in my chest, the one you get when you realize you're in deeper than you meant to be. We talked about nothing at first, the kind of small talk you only half listen to because your mind is tracing every movement the other person makes. She curled one leg beneath her on the sofa, fingers resting lightly on her knee. Every now and then she'd laugh, but it was never just about what I'd said. It was the way she'd look at me after, like she was reading a sentence that wasn't there. "You didn't have to bring it back so soon," she said finally, nodding toward the book. Maybe I wanted an excuse. That got a smile, not a wide one, but the kind where the corners of her mouth know something they're not telling you. She reached for the mug on the table, lifting it halfway before setting it down again, untouched. I noticed her hand linger close to mine, close enough that if either of us shifted, our fingers would meet. "You've got something," she said, motioning toward my cheek. I touched it automatically. "Gone." "No. Here." She leaned in, her hair brushing my temple, the faint scent of her shampoo cutting through the cinnamon in the air. Her fingertip grazed my skin, slow enough to feel like it had nothing to do with whatever was on my cheek. When she pulled back, the room felt smaller. We fell into a quiet that wasn't awkward, but wasn't safe either. My knee bounced once, betraying me. "You're different today," she said, studying me. "Different how?" "You're not trying so hard." I almost laughed, but her voice was too soft for that. She was right. I wasn't. And the strange thing was, it made me want to stay. Her eyes held mine a second too long before she looked away, not down, just elsewhere. A place I couldn't follow yet. I was about to ask her something, I don't even know what, when she shifted closer. One hand rested on my arm, light at first, then firmer, like she'd made a decision halfway through. Then she leaned in, close enough that I could feel her breath, and whispered, almost like it was a dare, "Now you can't leave." Before I could answer, the sharp trill of her phone broke the moment. It lit up on the table, face down, buzzing again and again. She didn't move to pick it up, but she didn't move away either. Her phone stopped buzzing after the third call. She still hadn't moved her hand from my arm. I could feel the heat of it through my shirt, and I knew. We were both pretending it meant nothing. She sat back slowly, like we'd been caught doing something we shouldn't, even though we hadn't. "Not really. You're quiet," she said. I shrugged, eyes drifting to the bookshelf behind her. "Just thinking. About how I probably shouldn't be here." That made her laugh. Short, almost too sharp. That's the smart answer. She didn't elaborate, but I didn't need her to. We both knew why. I'd known her for over a year now, ever since I started helping her neighbor, my aunt, with odd jobs. She was the friendly woman next door who occasionally invited me in for coffee, always with that guarded politeness that never quite reached her eyes. Until recently, I'd learned little pieces about her in fragments. Divorced 5 years. No kids. Used to teach literature at the community college. Now she freelanced from home, editing manuscripts, she said, though sometimes I suspected she read more than she worked. I didn't mean, I started, but she cut me off. "You're not wrong. I am old enough to know better." She gave me a smile, but her gaze was somewhere else, like she was replaying a mistake only she could see. "I don't care about that," I said, too quickly. Her head tilted, eyes narrowing, like she was deciding if I believed my own words. "You think you don't? That's different." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind where every creak of the floorboard feels like it's in the wrong place. I wanted to tell her I wasn't some naive kid chasing a fantasy, but then again, maybe I was. Why'd you get divorced? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Because I stayed too long with someone who didn't see me anymore. And by the time I realized it, I'd forgotten how to leave. Something in my chest tightened. I wanted to tell her I'd never let her feel unseen, but the thoughts sounded too big, too permanent for the moment we were in. Instead, I said, I see you. Her eyes flicked to mine then, and for a moment, neither of us looked away. The clock in the kitchen ticked louder than it should have. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. She reached for her mug again, this time taking a sip even though the coffee had gone cold. You don't make things easy, she said. I smiled faintly. Neither do you. When I stood to leave, she followed me to the door. I reached for the handle, but she caught my wrist, not hard, just enough to stop me. Her thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, slow, deliberate. Be careful, she said. I didn't know if she meant with her, with myself, or with whatever this was becoming. Either way, I didn't move. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was halfway up my aunt's front steps when her door opened. She stepped out holding a stack of mail, sweater sleeves pushed up, the late afternoon sun catching the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. She froze for just a moment when she saw me, then smiled, the kind of smile that made it impossible to pretend we were just neighbors. You're early again, she said. Maybe I just like catching you off guard. I didn't mean for it to sound like that, but the way her mouth curved said she'd heard it anyway. I should have gone inside my aunt's place, but instead I found myself walking toward her. We ended up in her kitchen, me leaning against the counter, her sorting through envelopes without really looking at them. Coffee, she asked. It's 4 p.m. And her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't look at it. Don't you ever answer that thing? I asked. Not when it's him, she said, then caught herself, lips pressing tight. Him. An ex, she said lightly, too lightly. Before I could push, the front door opened. A voice called, Mom. I froze. She went still too, then muttered under her breath. You've got to be kidding me. A guy stepped into the kitchen, maybe my age, maybe a year older. Same green eyes as hers, same sharp chin. He looked between us, his gaze lingering on me a beat too long. This is, he asked. A friend, she said quickly. I swallowed. I help your aunt with stuff. I added, the words clumsy in my mouth. He didn't look convinced. After a few awkward exchanges, he disappeared down the hall. We both exhaled, but the air in the room didn't feel lighter. You didn't tell me you had a son, I said. You didn't ask. It should have been a joke, but it wasn't. Her eyes were steady, almost defiant. This is complicated, I said quietly. It was already complicated, she replied. She stepped past me toward the sink, her shoulder brushing mine, not by accident. My heart thudded hard enough to hear. You should go, she said, but her voice was softer than the words. I didn't. Not right away. Instead, I reached out, fingers brushing hers where they rested on the counter. She didn't pull back, but she didn't look at me either. You're making it worse, she whispered. Am I? Finally, she turned her head, and our eyes met. For a moment, I thought she was going to close the space between us. She even leaned the tiniest bit forward, before her son's footsteps echoed down the hall. She stepped away like nothing had happened. I left before I could make it harder for her. Or for me. I told myself I wouldn't go over there. I lasted 3 days. When I finally knocked, it was late enough that the street was quiet, the only light spilling from her living room window. She opened the door slowly, like she already knew it was me. You shouldn't be here, she said. No hello, no smile. Then tell me to leave. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't step aside. You saw my son the other day. You know what this looks like. I don't care. That's not true, she said. You do care. You just don't want to think about it yet. I stepped inside before I could talk myself out of it. She let me. The room was warmer than usual, the air thick with whatever she'd been cooking earlier. Garlic, rosemary, something earthy. She stood near the sofa, arms crossed, watching me like I might break something if I got too close. Then her phone lit up on the table again. Same name as before. She didn't reach for it. Is that him? I asked. Her brow tightened. Why does it matter? Because you don't answer when he calls. And because every time you don't, I feel. I cut myself off, jaw tight. You feel what? like I'm already losing to someone who's not even in the room. Her expression softened, but she didn't move. That's not fair. Neither is this. I took a step toward her. You tell me I shouldn't be here, but you don't want me to go. You look at me like you're waiting for me to do something. Then you act like I've crossed a line if I get too close. She exhaled slowly, shoulders loosening just enough for me to notice. You think this is easy for me? I think you're scared. Her eyes locked on mine, sharp but unblinking. I am. I'm scared of what I'll want if I stop thinking about the rules. For a second, neither of us moved. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Then she closed the gap between us, not all the way, just enough that the scent of her perfume wrapped around me. If I let you, she stopped herself, biting her lip. You don't know what that would mean for me. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered a moment too long. I'm here, I said quietly. That's what it means for me. Her hand came up, almost like she was going to touch my chest, but she froze there, palm hovering in the space between us. We stood like that, caught in the pull, until the sound of a key turning in the front door made her drop her hand. I didn't see her for over a week. Every time I walked past her house, the curtains were drawn. Her car was there, but the lights stayed off until late. I told myself she was just busy. I didn't believe it. When she finally called, her voice was careful, too careful. Can you come over? I need to talk to you. The way she said it made my stomach knot. When I got there, she didn't invite me in right away. She stood in the doorway, sweater sleeves pulled down over her hands, eyes flicking past me like she was making sure no one else saw. Inside, the living room was dim, blinds closed even though it was still afternoon. She didn't sit. What's going on? I asked. Her hands twisted in her sleeves. My son, he asked about you. I froze. He said he saw the way you looked at me, she continued. He's not stupid. And he's angry. Not just angry. He thinks, she trailed off. He thinks what? She met my eyes then, and there was a flash of something like panic. He thinks you're here for him. That I'm just. She stopped herself, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what he thinks. What matters is he's watching now. That's not true, I said quickly. I know, she cut in. But it's what he believes. And if he starts telling people, the weight of it sank in, thick and ugly. So that's it. I asked. We just pretend none of this happened? She didn't answer. I stepped closer. You could tell him the truth. Her laugh was sharp and humorless. The truth? That I've been letting a 20-something kid stand too close in my kitchen? She stopped, voice breaking just enough for me to hear it. That's not the kind of truth that makes things better. Something hot rose in my chest. Frustration, hurt, maybe both. So you're choosing his version over me? I'm choosing the version that doesn't burn my life down, she said, voice low. I wanted to say more, to push, but then I noticed the envelope on the table. It wasn't hers. It had my name on it. What's this? I asked. She hesitated, then said, he came by yesterday. Left it. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence, scrawled in tight handwriting. Stay away from her. She's not who you think she is. When I looked back at her, she was watching me carefully, not denying it, not explaining. And that was the worst part. I didn't see her for over a week. Every time I walked past her house, the curtains were drawn. Her car was there, but the lights stayed off until late. I told myself she was just busy. I didn't believe it. When she finally called, her voice was careful, too careful. Can you come over? I need to talk to you. The way she said it made my stomach knot. When I got there, she didn't invite me in right away. She stood in the doorway, sweater sleeves pulled down over her hands, eyes flicking past me like she was making sure no one else saw. Inside, the living room was dim, blinds closed even though it was still afternoon. She didn't sit. What's going on? I asked. Her hands twisted in her sleeves. My son, he asked about you. I froze. He said he saw the way you looked at me, she continued. He's not stupid. And he's angry. Not just angry. He thinks, she trailed off. He thinks what? She met my eyes then, and there was a flash of something like panic. He thinks you're here for him. That I'm just. She stopped herself, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what he thinks. What matters is he's watching now. That's not true, I said quickly. I know, she cut in. But it's what he believes. And if he starts telling people, the weight of it sank in, thick and ugly. So that's it. I asked. We just pretend none of this happened? She didn't answer. I stepped closer. You could tell him the truth. Her laugh was sharp and humorless. The truth? That I've been letting a 20-something kid stand too close in my kitchen? She stopped, voice breaking just enough for me to hear it. That's not the kind of truth that makes things better. Something hot rose in my chest. Frustration, hurt, maybe both. So you're choosing his version over me? I'm choosing the version that doesn't burn my life down, she said, voice low. I wanted to say more, to push, but then I noticed the envelope on the table. It wasn't hers. It had my name on it. What's this? I asked. She hesitated, then said, he came by yesterday. Left it. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence, scrawled in tight handwriting. Stay away from her. She's not who you think she is. When I looked back at her, she was watching me carefully, not denying it, not explaining. And that was the worst part. I didn't knock this time. I just walked in. She was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, chopping onions like it was the most normal thing in the world. She didn't look up when she said, "You shouldn't be here." "You've said that before," I replied, shutting the door behind me. "And I'm still here." She set the knife down, fingers resting on the counter's edge. "You read it, didn't you?" I did. I stepped closer. "And you didn't deny it." Her shoulders lifted in a slow breath. "Because denying things only makes people push harder. And I don't have the energy for that right now." That's not an answer. She finally looked at me. "Maybe I don't owe you one." Something in me cracked at that. "You owe me something. After everything. You can't just pull me in and then pretend I imagined it." "I'm not pretending." Her voice was quiet now, but there was a tremor in it. "I just don't know if I can do what you want me to do." "What I want?" I laughed without humor. "All I've wanted is for you to stop looking at me like I'm a mistake you haven't made yet." Her eyes flickered. Hurt, recognition, maybe both. "You're younger than my son," she said finally, like it was the only thing that mattered. "I'm not him," I shot back. "And you're not my mother. So why does it matter?" "Because it changes the way people see me. And I've already been taken apart enough times in my life." I could hear the crack in her voice then. She looked down at her hands like they'd betrayed her by shaking. I closed the space between us. "I see you. Not the age. Not the history. You." She shook her head, but she didn't step back. "You're making this harder," she whispered. "I'm trying to make it real." For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Her hand lifted, just slightly, like she might touch my face. Then it curled back into her chest. "If we do this," she said, barely audible, "I can't undo it. And you can't give it back once it's mine." "Then take it," I said. Her breath caught. She didn't move, not yet, but the distance between us felt thinner than air. And that's when a loud knock rattled the front door. We both froze. She glanced toward the sound, then back at me, eyes wide with something I couldn't name. "I have to answer that," she murmured. I didn't move. "I'll still be here when you come back." She hesitated a beat too long before walking away. The knock at the door seemed to last forever. When she finally opened it, it was just a delivery driver holding a small package. She signed for it, murmured a thanks, and closed the door like it weighed more than she could lift. We stood there in the living room, the moment from before still buzzing in the air, neither of us sure how to restart. "You were ready to leave, weren't you?" she asked quietly. "Not unless you told me to." She smiled, a real one this time, though it looked almost foreign on her face after weeks of half-smiles and sidelong glances. "I've been telling myself the wrong things," she admitted, "trying to keep the safe version of my life intact. And I don't think I want the safe version anymore." I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her. "So what do you want?" She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're too young to be asking questions like that." I grinned. "Too young for you to answer honestly?" Her gaze softened, and this time when her hand lifted, it didn't stop halfway. She cupped my jaw, thumb brushing the corner of my mouth. "I want to stop pretending." The words felt like they split something open in both of us. I leaned in just enough for her to feel the choice sitting between us. She didn't back away. The kiss wasn't rushed, but it wasn't cautious either. It felt like both of us were finally admitting to something we'd been circling for months. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. "You understand this won't be simple," she murmured. "I understand," I said. "But I'd rather have complicated with you than simple without you." She gave me a look, a mix of disbelief and something warmer, deeper. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Maybe not," I said, "but I know I want to find out." We didn't talk about her son, or the stares we'd get, or the calls from people who just wanted to make sure she was okay. Those things were still out there, waiting for us. But right then, they felt far away. We stayed like that, standing in her living room, the world outside pressing in, but the space between us untouchable. I left later that night, but not before she pulled me back for one last kiss at the door. "Now," she said, a small smile playing at her lips, "you really can't leave." This time, I believed her.